Yes, I think you don't feel discriminated because you work for a foreign media outlets. If we look at the media outlets in the Middle East, you will definitely find discrimination and stereotypes among gender.
How do you justify that? What's your evidence of that?
I've been into many media outlets, and I think and
Have you faced discrimination?
yes, I faced it, and also there are standards that we are requested. For example, the look, the accent. They don't just look toward us.
Men can look like anything that just was pulled in
No,
off the
not
street,
like
and
anything.
women have to
It's not true, but
have the additional pressure of hair and makeup?
But we have to be very strong not to be discriminated. We have to prove ourselves. And as the ambassador said in the early afternoon, I believe that because also they work for example, for the UAE, they respect their ambassadors. That's why they don't feel discriminated. There are countries where women feel discriminated.
Have you heard stories of discrimination? Is that your question? Is your question to
Yes.
discrimination?
Do you think that only because you work for a foreign media outlet, you've never been subject to discrimination? Have you heard stories of other journalists discriminated? Thank you.
May, did you want to?
No, I think that Sonia has a story to tell us about what she went through while covering the revolution in Egypt.
So let's set the scene for this. We talked about it a bit last night. We would be naive to think that the challenge is that it is an absolute level playing field for women on the front lines as opposed to men. Egypt, what was the date?
It was the 17th of October.
17th of October, and you were doing your job.
Yeah.
You were reporting late in the evening.
Yeah.
You were doing a live shot. It's available for everyone to see on YouTube. And pick up the story from there.
Yeah, so I was doing a live shot from Tahrir, from the square. Usually we do it from a balcony, from a building that overlooked the place. And for many reasons, I was supposed to do a last one at 6 p.m. and I had to do the very last one at 10, so it was quite a last minute. And the thing is, like, for the past 2 years, and especially for the first year and a half even, I spent almost all my Friday, in Tahrir. So it became a bit like home, like all my weekend I was in Tahrir, and you recognize some faces, and you feel the place, so maybe this is the risk because you're too familiar with the environment. So you heard stories, but you think that you know the risk and it's going to be okay. And this time, I think the thing where maybe we lost control is that I had to stand for 10 minutes in front of the camera before doing my live shots, and so I think this attracted the attention, and it was
with
the lights on, and so fortunately I was with my coworker Ashraf Khalil that is freelancing for the English channel, and we felt that the tension rose like really like maybe 5-10 minutes just before doing my live. Just, the crowd began to surround us, but it was more like you have kind of everything. You have some people that was just curious, like, a mom with her children, and then some young people just hang around. You definitely didn't have like protesters. It was really like, it was 10 p.m. The protest, this time it was like a liberal protest, so most were liberal in the square, and it was, they were all leaving. So, and so
Sonia,
this is the first time. What?
What happened?
So as soon as I began to talk, on camera, we felt like really people getting excited, a lot of trying to talk in the same time than me, taking pictures. And as soon as I finished the live, we felt that there was something wrong, and so my coworker, he was supposed to do the live just after me, but he dropped the mic. He went just in front of me because, like, I mean, it was in few seconds we just were surrounded by like dozens of men, and then 20, 30, 40. Like after it was like the crowd mentality, like the mob mentality, where just everyone joined. Some people say, you know, they like helping you, but you feel that the one that's saying, "Don't worry, I'm helping you."
You were groped?
Yeah, yeah.
You were sexually assaulted?
Yeah.
The amazing thing about you and meeting you, and I mentioned this to you last night, you don't wear it. Maybe you can talk to us about how you overcame that to continue to do your work. It was horrible. It could have been worse, correct?
Mm-hmm. Oh, totally.
But tell us how it is you were able to overcome that, what lessons you draw from that experience.
First, I think because the issue of harassment is well known since a long time in Egypt, we had already many cases like that in Egypt, so I knew what was happening to me even while it was happening. So I think the shock was less because even when it was happening, I could kind of analyze it and, you know, and just thought, okay, if you stay standing up and you know, you hold to your coworker, they're not going to kill you. The goal is to go find a place to find a refuge, basically. And so the day after, I was already feeling better because, yes, I really escaped the worst. You know, it was really shocking, but I really escaped the worst. And I mean, for me, there was no way to finish on that note. You know, I've been 2 days later, I was in France because I got pressure from like family and work, you know, to come back, because first I was like, no, you know, I'm okay, I can just go on. But I think it was a good thing to go back to France to realize that, you know, these things is not normal. But because you're like in a bubble, you know, you see that it happened a lot, you really minimize the risk. And for me as a woman, it was really hard, but as a journalist, I just, you know, wanted to go back in the country and to cover even more, you know, this kind of harassment, especially that we saw that since January, so like 2-3 months after it happened to me, it became like very extreme. Now they're using weapons, and we all know it's planned for some of the attack. So as a journalist, I really, really wanted to go back to Egypt and to finish my work, because I felt, you know, I wasn't done with what I had to do over there, and covering the issue of harassment was one of the goals.
Who is harassing the women of Egypt?
So, I mean, it's a long, I mean, it has been, the harassment exists in Egypt since many years. We know that even under Mubarak, you know, he was using sometimes as a tool to impede women to go demonstrate. And it rose after the revolution. To be sure, today, like, you will hear a lot of different stories. Even, like, the last few weeks, I was to a lot of conferences in Egypt with the activists from Tahrir and some of the victims, some of the women who really now it's great also to see how the women speak out. Like I follow one of the victims, she was in a demonstration a few weeks ago against harassment with her mom coming also, like the family supporting the woman to speak out. And so, for instance, this girl who has been harassed in November, so during the protest against the constitution, told me, you know, like I'm sure it was the Islamists because only them had an interest in us not protesting. But you have also other people who accuse sometimes policemen dressed in civilian clothes to harass. You have also, I mean, today it's hard to point out the finger of one specific group, but there is definitely different group who has an interest in not having women protesting in the street, and like some of the attacks are definitely planned. It's like the same spot, the same techniques, you know, that are used, and now weapons are involved. So I don't think today we have enough proof really to point out one group, and I think there is different group having an interest, you know, in women not going out in the squares. And also, even if, you know, you have these attacks that are planned, you also have like the culture, the tradition that made a lot of men. I mean, I think 85 women in Egypt say they have been harassed once. More than half of the men say they're already harassed, you know. And when you talk to the young Egyptians today, they really underlies, you know, that the fact the boys are educated and the economic difficulties too, because if you're a guy and you want to get married, you need to get an apartment, and a lot of guys cannot afford that, and so there some, you know, never had sexual relation before like 30, even sometimes 40 years old, so there is a lot of sexual frustration.
What?
So, yeah.
Oh, okay. So I want to ask in a moment, have you think about the idea of how you minimize the risk to yourselves personally. But we've got a question. What's your name?
My name is Jad Melki. I'm the director of the Media Studies program at the American University of Beirut. I want to echo the words of one of our colleagues. I'm also a former journalist and war correspondent briefly. We're conducting a study about female journalists in Lebanon, sexual harassment and gender discrimination, and we're finding a lot of information that, again, echoes her concerns. You come from the US and Europe, respectable institutions, a lot of laws that enforce gender equity and forbid sexual harassment. This does not exist to a large extent in this part of the world. I'll throw out a couple of numbers. Male journalists outnumber females in Lebanon by 2 to 1. If you go up to the management, news directors, editors, and the upper tier, women are 20%, 15%, 10%, and dwindling. When it comes to sexual harassment, we've found a lot of female journalists that either are not easily able to share their information with us, and those who are able to share the information, they're telling us a lot of the harassment is coming from security apparatus, army, police, and politicians. And I'm talking about specifically Lebanon. I wish you would be able to comment on this. And what about your experience specifically in this part of the world? And can I make a very quick pitch? We're very interested in interviewing any journalist who has worked in Lebanon, whether Lebanese or not. My colleague here, Rowan, and I would be glad to stand with you or talk to you for a couple of minutes if you don't mind. Thanks.
Terrific. Thoughts? Pretty broad question.
I think, you know, obviously, it's an evolution of a culture and a nation. And, you know, yes, we work for Western organizations, so we know that we are protected to a certain degree, and we obviously all fully appreciate that the dynamics are very different when it comes to journalists working in Lebanon, especially female journalists in Lebanon and throughout, you know, the Middle East as a whole. And I think, I mean, therein lies the challenge for women. It's not easy to try to bat off certain inappropriate sexual innuendos. It's, I would assume, a lot easier to do it when you know that your network is behind you and that you can then take action against an individual, and that those actions will have consequences that will not reflect on you, but that will actually reflect on the individual. You know, and I fully appreciate that there have been some phenomenal women ahead of me in my field, you know, being part of an American network and other Western networks that have actually charted this path for me already. So I can come in right now and feel fairly confident that if I were to confront certain situations, other people have fought that battle for me already. So I've already got the groundwork and the framework. And all I can really say right now is that the challenge right now is for Lebanese female journalists to chart the same course that was charted for us in our past for other Lebanese that are coming forward in the next generations.
I completely agree with Arwa on the sort of people having charted a path for us. That meant that for me, I could just, you know, I've only actually been to the Daily Telegraph's office in London 3 times. I don't really know the staff there that well other than on the phone, because I was able to come to this job by just coming out to the Middle East and started, you know, once I had the number of the foreign editor, start making pictures. And that, I think, helped the gender issue a lot, because I was a voice at the end of the phone and the focus was the stories. The bigger challenge, of course, is actually as you were saying, you know, working in the environment, working with politicians, security forces, and I think sometimes the way you just have to be so absolutely resolute in your determination and your professionalism to get that story in a professional way, and not that anybody wouldn't do that, but you know, for example, in Libya, sometimes I went to one conservative part of the country, the Western Mountains, and Zintan, and in that area, it's very unusual to have women going around on the front lines along with the men. And the guy who was helping me work there, he just point blank refused to take me to the front. I said, well, let's go to the front. He said, no, you're a woman. And it took a while, but all I had to say to him in the end, I said, look, treat me exactly the same as if I was a man. Just pretend I'm a man. Imagine I'm a man. And once he got that into his head...
How did that go?
That went really well. I mean, he found it hilarious. Once he got it into his head, that, you know, it's because he was being respectful in many ways, as this is what, you know, this is not something for you. Once he realized that, then we were able to work together really, really well. So I think that sort of total determination, but I recognize that that comes again with a lot of time, and perhaps as a foreigner in this society, it's easier for me to achieve than if you were actually coming from this country.